Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and you know what time it is. Your favorite time of the release, the Market Watch. With every new set, we got to go ahead and speculate exactly what we think the price of cards are going to be. And I'm going to try to do my best to go ahead and give you as much educated information that I can from playing the set, playing card games for a very long time, and just kind of overall understanding where the price of cards really go. So the first thing we got to talk about when we talk about a new set is the price of the booster box. So we're going to use TCG Player as, again, the median to find out our valuations. And the Kingdom of Intrigue box is going to be going for about $100. Now, if you've played the game since set 1, you know that these are pretty good numbers. This is the first time I think we see a box under the $100 mark on release, on pre-sale, which is really, really solid. Set 1 was in like the 160s. Set 2 somehow got to 200. Set 3 came down to like 120, and now we're about at $100. This directly influences card prices. So if the box is coming down, the price of cards also inherently comes down with it. So as you can see here, it was pre-released in June for about $125, and now we're hitting all-time lows at about $100. I've seen stores in my area selling them at $95 and even around $90. MSRP for one piece, I believe, is around $85. So we're getting there, boys. We're finally getting to a much more healthy economy for this card game, which is really, really nice. So if the box is at $99, let's go ahead and see what the other cards are pre-release valued at. Starting with the Sabo. I'm going to start off with the mangas. The mangas are always really hard to go ahead and denote the price of. Sabo right now going for $800. It doesn't have any sold listings. You only got one person putting them up, and it's Mad Cards. How's it going, Mad Cards? Shout out to you guys. So yeah, Mad Cards went ahead and posted this up. And does that mean it's going to be an $800 card? Very likely that it isn't, right? So Usopp on pre-release, I believe, was pre-releasing for like $600, and now it's anywhere between $300 to $400, like $300 to $500 range. I know 500 is like really pushing it, but you can probably get a manga Usopp for about like $400, I can say comfortably. So this card being an $800 card, I don't necessarily think it will hold. Now, this card is playable. Not saying that Usopp isn't by any means, but this card is almost a 4 of in most black decks. It's a very, very powerful card. Sabo isn't like, I wouldn't say he's more popular than Usopp, so it's not going to be like a, as such as a collector's piece that's going to drive this up either. The card looks excellent, but again, so does the Soga King. So it's really hard to denote. I don't think this card will hold $800 by any means. If you do pull it, I would immediately try to sell it if you can. If you're trying to pick up this card as a collector, give it some time. I do believe this will settle anywhere between like lower than $500. So you'll save yourself a bit of, on the transaction by doing that. Just having a little bit of patience can go a long way with these specific cards. Now, then we're going to start off with the leaders, right? So the most anticipated leader of this set is Rebecca. Now, why specifically Rebecca? Only the Lord knows. It's a deck that is a little bit different. It's a combo deck. It does something a little different. It's a dual color deck. The card looks beautiful, and it did win some tournaments in the East. So in terms of a competitive standpoint, yes, there is some merit to Rebecca. From the collector side, I mean, if you're a Rebecca enjoyer, I guess there is that as well. I really enjoyed the Desrosa arc, but that's a hefty price to have a Rebecca card. So moving on. Why did I premiere this one as the first of the leaders? Well, because I do think this one's going to hold a lot of value in the beginning of the set. I think a lot of people are excited to play Rebecca that haven't played Rebecca. Because they're like, oh, new leader, it has black, it has blue, it doesn't have red in it. Oh my god, a competitive leader without the red color. And then they're going to try it, and then the leader's kind of hard, and it's not insanely rewarding, and has pretty polarizing matchups. And they're going to drop the deck. And then these cards are going to plummet in value. Now, this is, again, my complete speculation on the card. So I do think this card is initially going to be 150s to 120s. And then immediately, within like the next month, I will expect to see this card hit way under $100. Probably around 70s if I had to guess. This is a big, a big and hot take. Dropping this card by $100 within the next month. At least that's what I expect. As you can see here, this card was pre-released. Still, I don't think anyone... we do have a couple sales. We have 2 people that have bought it at that price. These are people that are truly Rebecca one-tricks at this point in time. They have priced it in. Not to say that the leader's bad by any means, but again, I do think that a lot of people are going to flock to it. find out that it's not for them, and then move back to other shades of the color wheel. Then we've got Queen. Queen is one of the leaders that I'm most excited about. I think this leader is very good. I think it's having a lot of success in OP-05 as the meta, again, somehow has slowed down even further in the East. And yeah, Queen is a pretty solid deck. It's very, very strong. I do believe that the cards that go into the Queen deck are also going to be highly priced as well. So even though that the leader is not as expensive as Rebecca, it's going to play a lot more. If you want to alt art your deck, it's going to be playing a lot more of those. So you're going to be playing the Sanjis, you're going to be playing the Kaidos, you're going to be playing Yamatos, you're going to be playing Katakuri and Mihawks. You're going to be playing a lot on these big cards. But I do think that 120 is a pretty solid starting point for this card. I don't even know where I would evaluate. I think this deck is exceptional. I don't know how many people are going to flock to it. I don't know exactly how many people are excited for it. I know a lot of people down here are believers that this is a very powerful deck. In terms of sales, we don't even have a sale on this yet, so it doesn't seem like initially it was put up at 160 and we've come down to 120 and we're still not getting sales on it, which means that this will probably continue to drop just a little bit. Maybe, again, this might be the inverse of Rebecca, right? It might start off low and then go back up as people start to figure out this deck. Possibly, I can see picking this deck up for anywhere, or picking this card up for anywhere below 80 bucks is going to be fantastic. I think that should be a pretty fair evaluation of this card. It basically buys back the box for a really solid leader, in my opinion. Other than that, again, I still think 120 is on the high side, but this is a pre-release price that's also priced into it, which it should bring the card up just a little, or pull it up. But 80 bucks is where I want to go ahead and say this card may fall under. Then we've got Flamingo. Now, Flamingo is also holding a very high number, specifically the highest number in the set, behind the Sabo, the Manga Sabo, and for good reason. I've played this deck, and the deck is a ton of fun. It really is. But even if it's not good, not saying it isn't, but even if the deck were not good, the deck is so much fun to play, and it has very interesting lines, and you can either build it with the heavy film package, you can build it with more Flamingo family, and honestly, the card just looks freaking insane. Who told Bandai to go this hard on card art, huh? My goodness, I can't wait to see this in person, but I do think that this deck is super cool. It'll be tier 1.5-ish. I think the deck has very good matchups and very bad matchups. Again, another very heavily polarizing deck, but it can do a lot of things, and you can tech this deck very heavily. Even though you're a 4-life leader, the deck kind of does a lot. I'm excited for this deck. Do I think this will be $184? Not necessarily. I do think a lot of people are going to flock to this deck a lot as well. And I know a lot of people who have been immediately very excited for this leader. They've been excited for a very long time. I mean, it has that, he is one of the best villains in the saga, if not the best villain, and that's another hot take, but that's a whole other thing. In terms of collectors, he's a 10. In terms of playability, he's a 10. I think this card might hold very heavily for the next couple of weeks, and then unless it sees a lot of success in tournaments, it'll start to come down just a bit. I would keep this card, and I'm going to keep this card as the highest, around like 120-ish is where I can see this card being at a fair price after the pre-release, and then like I said, it may come down or may maintain that evaluation depending on its success in tournament gameplay. But I do think it'll also have success as it is just kind of powerful. Then we've got Vivi. Vivi right now being at 120 bucks. This is going to be like the meme leaders on a set, like a Garp. Again, all you Garp players, no hate, please. But this is going to be a leader that's going to just plummet very heavily, like a Kazuki Odin, if anything. I can see this card, again, if the box is about 90 bucks, I can see this leader at 40, anywhere less than $50. It's not, it just ain't it. I've played it, it's a ton of fun, but fun doesn't get you wins, and I think wins is what really carries the price of cards, right? It is a really cool leader. It has a lot of collector value. Vivi is, a character that people are very fond of from the show, but I don't necessarily think she's $120. I'm not that fond of her, but funnily enough, we got 4 sales at 120, so respect to those people, but I do think this card will inevitably just plummet. And that's, again, maybe another hot take on the card. I do think this is anywhere between $50 to $40 easily. Then we've got Isho, and Isho is going to be very similar to Vivi in my opinion. It is a leader that does cool things and has some cool cards, but is it really that cool? And if we are doing these things, why not just play anyone else? As a dual colored green leader, you have a lot of options. You can be playing Law, or you can be playing Flamingo, you can be playing mono green. There's just a lot of very different things you can be doing with the green color. And Isho, I don't necessarily does anything that kind of like takes your breath away. That merits him as his own leader. Yeah, he has cool things. There are some green navy cards, but maybe in the future, as more of them are printed, he gets more oomph. But as it is right now, I'm just not as impressed with this deck. This is a leader that I know I have specific friends that are super excited for this deck, but I don't think it's anything to write home about. And because of that, I do think that this is going to have the same issue as Vivi. It's going to dump anywhere between 50, 60 bucks if you want to go ahead and try to give it more of an evaluation. It is a little bit more competitively viable than Vivi. It is an Admiral. He's blinds. I don't know. I can't do it. I can't imagine him holding this price for very long. We do have one sale at 115 bucks, which has set a price for it. But does that mean he's going to hold it? I don't think so. Then we've got Crocodile. Crocodile is a leader that I personally am excited for. I think he's super cool. I think he's pretty strong. He has, again, polarizing matchups. And 113 is nowhere near what I'm going to try to pay for him. This is way, way, way too high. If I were to go ahead and pick up this card myself, I would start offering, and this is pseudo being generous, at pre-release prices around $75. I would say, yeah, I'll give you around 75, give or take. They may or may not take it. If they do take it, great. I do have a little bit of wiggle room there to gain or to lose, but I'm probably down to lose $10. I do think this card is going to be anywhere between 60 to 70 bucks. It is the Crocinator. He's pretty cool. The art is fantastic. I mean, he looks super menacing, and the leader is kind of interesting. Same issue that Queen has. There are a bunch of great yellow cards that you're just going to have to play in this deck. Katakuri, Yamato, Sanji just kind of fit into this deck as almost 4 ofs of each. So you're going to be paying a pretty penny for all those cards once again. But once you got them, I guess you can double dip between Queen and Croc pretty easily. I do think that this leader does have some merit, but 120 or 115 just ain't it. And then starting off with the bangers of the set. These are just the powerful altards. I'm going to start off with Kaido. The art, mamma mia. The card, wow. I don't know, 75 bucks actually feels like not a dumb evaluation of this card. Although altards come to like 1 to a box, sometimes 2 to a box. The leaders, on the other hand, it's like 4 boxes in. Sorry, the leaders come 4 leaders in a case. So therefore, the leaders are almost like 1 in every 3 boxes, whereas the other altards can be seen in other capacities. So because of that, these cards tend to be a little bit cheaper than leaders naturally do. Now, on the flip side, I think Kaido is worth way more than Vivi and Isho, on the other hand. So I think Kaido, if he has anywhere to go, anywhere room to go, he would probably be around like 40 to 50 bucks. I can even see him going a little bit lower, even into the 30s, if people just don't value him the way I do. But yeah, this is a card that I'm going to be on the lookout for. I think it is a magnificent card, super duper strong. And yeah, I'm excited to see this card. It's tough to say. There's not many sales. There's not really much going on, so I don't think it's a $75 card. I mean, I think it's going to hold some good pricing. But again, the decks that are expected or that people are flocking to, Rebecca doesn't really play too many of these, if any. Flamingo doesn't play these. Queen does play this, but like at low counts. So because of that, maybe it'll come down just a bit. I'm going to wait out on this card, wait about a week or two just to see exactly where he goes. But I do expect this card to be, pretty good. If it drops initially, that's great. Pick it up because I do think it'll come right back up. Very powerful card. Then we've got the Monkey D. Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy it's a Luffy. It's good. Is it $120 good? That's the next question. So this is part of the Rebecca deck. It's kind of like the bread and butter of their deck. It really does it all. It kind of it's the glue that holds the Rebecca deck together. Let's put it like that. It is Desrosa and Straw Hat. So if you are playing a deck that can play Straw Hat Searchers, aka like Garp. You can play Nami and Find It, and Rebecca. You have dual search for this, which is kind of cute. But besides that, I don't think, I'm trying to see if there's any sales. Nope, no sales at 120. So I do think this card can come down just a bit. Again, it's one of the bangers of the set. It is not as banger of as a leader, but the deck that does play this plays it at 4. That's the important note. This is a 4 of in the Rebecca deck, and because of that, it might hold a little bit more value than the Kaido. Kaido is a powerful card, but not many decks play it at 4. They might play it at 2 to 3, and because of that, usually cards tend to be a little bit cheaper. Again, because the set is now an $100 set towards $95, the price of cards tends to be a little bit cheaper. So I can see this card again, 50s, 60s. Just think about it. Whitebeard, it was a 4 of in the Whitebeard deck. It was a 4 of in almost 3 or 4 decks. And that card eventually, inevitably went to $50. And then after the hit, it went even cheaper, but that's a whole different thing. This card is a 4 of in one deck. When you put that into perspective, I can see this card again, not holding such a crazy price tag. The only thing that might hold it up even heavier is the collector value of another Luffy card, but that is super hard to quantify. So I'll give it about $50 on the Luffy. Then we've got Yamato again. Wow, what a banger of a card. The decks that play this and want to play this play it at 4. It is super strong for the yellow color. There's not much that I can say. The card is fantastic. The Queen deck, the Crocodile deck. I don't think Katakuri, Big Mom play, but Arlong does play it. Any deck that is like any of the odd yellow decks really like this card. The other decks, not so much, but Queen in particular really loves this card. And because of that, depending on Queen's success, this card will have the same thing. And as I speculated with the Queen initially, I do not think it'll have a lot of early success, but it'll have like an afterburner effect. And because of that, I can see this card coming down and then right back up. So I do think this card may even hit, funnily enough, the 30s, which is the range that I'm going to be looking to pick her up at, and then climb back up as the Queen deck has success. The card is really good, guys. If you've ever summoned this card, you know what I mean. And moving on, we've got Don Quixote do Flamingo. Again, the Flamingo deck is a deck that I think is going to be super duper popular. This is holding an $100 valuation at this point in time, and it does have sales. The sales are a little wonky, right? Because it actually climbed up. It started off as 80, then 90. Now we're putting it at 100. Do I think it is an $100 card? By no means, but it is a very good card, and it's going to be tethered with the Flamingo success. Most green decks are going to want to play this card because this card is just that good. The fact that you can go back to back on this card is really solid, but as players end up becoming better, more equipped to handle the meta, more practiced, this card does lose a little bit of its oomph. There are certain situations with Flamingo where you are inevitably going to have to play into it, and that's perfectly fine. You gotta sometimes do what you gotta do. If they don't have it on those turns, you're rewarded, but if you are able to play around it, if you're not forced to play into the Flamingo and you do play around it, this card very rarely has value. And sometimes if your opponent's just really smart with it, it's very difficult to field the Flamingo and then just continuously have it onto the board. If your opponent also has these powerful 10 drops in their deck, there's a lot of removal with red rocks and things like that, that this card doesn't usually get the stickiness that a 10 drop would normally have. So it's really tough to, with all those things said, I don't think the card is an $100 card. It is a very powerful card, but I think it'll have a lot of early price and then drop down in price, right? So this is a card that I can see people trying to move it for like 60s, and then as time moves on, drop very heavily, as not heavily, but maybe towards like the 40s, right? A $20 drop into the card. Then we've got Rosinante. Rosinante is one of the secrets from the set that has an altar, but unfortunately, there just really isn't a spot for him in the meta. This feels very akin to like a Shanks, right? The Shanks 9-drop is a really good card. It's playable. It's not necessarily bad, but is it worth the slot in your deck at this time? I don't necessarily think so, and that's the unfortunate part. This card has, funnily enough, the Navy Don Quixote tag, so it can be played in like Isho, and Isho can search it. Are there really 5 drops that Isho, because the green 5 drops that Isho wants to play? Because this card is restricted to specifically summoning green 5-costed cards. Not necessarily. It kind of only fits in that weird Odin deck. That stay tuned for that, boys. But other than that, it really doesn't have a home. It is an interesting collector's piece. The art is beautiful. You know, it's cool, but I don't think it's going to hold anywhere near $75. This card, like the Altard Usopp, closer to 20s, maybe even 15s, is where I would evaluate this card, and that's a big push down. It's unfortunate, but it's just a reality of valuations. Then we've got, now I'm going to start grouping the Altards by categories. I'm going to continue with the Don Quixote family, and we've got Sugar. I think Sugar is a very, very good card. The art is insane, by the way. This scene is hilarious, and I mean, there's a lot of good things that go into this card. Now, do I think this card is an $80 card? Not necessarily. I do think there are probably some sales, and I'm correct. There are some people that are just blinging out this Flamingo deck immediately. Respect. But oftentimes, I don't think this card is necessarily a 4-of, right? So in the Flamingo deck, the way that it is in the meta, it's a base film deck with very little Flamingo splash, right? You'll have like some Sugar, some Diamante, the Flamingo events, and then the 10-drop. That's basically it for the deck. Now, do you play 4 Sugars? Probably not. You can play anywhere between like 2 to 4. 3 is the nice little average that you can put there. Diamante is another card that you don't max out on, and Flamingo you do max out on. That's a completely different story, but that's kind of where the deck lies. Again, if you're not a 4-of, that drops your price. If you're only playable in one deck, well, once again, that drops your price because she is tethered to specifically Doflamingo. So again, I can see Sugar because it's such a very niche card into that Flamingo deck. I can see this card being anywhere between $25 to $35. I don't think it's going to go any higher or lower than that. It's a very powerful card, and because of that, it still keeps up that little elevation in price. But again, I don't think it's going to should be going for much higher than that. Then we've got Diamante, which is another card that I just spoke about. Again, not a 4-of. This is not as necessarily as good as Sugar, so because of that, he's going to drop a little bit. But it's a pretty decent card for what it's worth in the Flamingo deck. This is a card that's not necessarily tied to Flamingo, but it kind of is at the end of the day. And because of that, this card ends up being like, again, $20 to $30 is where I would put this range. Maybe even lower. You can see this card possibly hitting below $20. And then lastly, we've got Treble. Now, Treble, I very rarely see this guy being played in any deck, but he's not bad. There is some spice with him, but usually when a card is not bad and there's spice with it, that doesn't correlate with the price of the card. And usually because of that, cards end up becoming like the losers of set. Maybe go very low on the price initially, and then when someone finds the spice, it goes up in price. And because of that, I think Treble will be one of those cards. If someone does find spice with it, yes. If not, it's going to stay with its price. And I do think this card may even hit $10 or below. We have seen Altards that are below $10 before. Then we've got the Sabo. Sabo is a 4-of in almost every single black deck. It is a good card. The art is good. He's part of the ASL. Tough to evaluate this card. Really, really tough. I would have to say, again, he's Dressrosa, Revolutionary Army. Not that that matters. She's a 4-of in the Rebecca deck. I mean, he's a 4-of in the Rebecca deck. He's a 4-of in all black decks for all time. Just a staple. And because of that, staples usually hold value. He reminds me very much of like the Rush Zoro. He's like a blocker law. Blocker law in green has become like a weird staple that has stuck around since set 1. So because of that, I do think this card will be on the heftier side of prices. I do think 50 to 60 might be its home. And seeing that the card is already starting at 80 is a really good start. So if he does dip below $50 and you are a black enjoyer, go check him out. Then we've got Kitos. Kitos is part of the Rebecca deck. Kind of one of the most important and annoying cards in the deck. $75 does seem high. It is a 4-of. It is specifically in one deck. And again, because of that, it might hold up some value. Since Rebecca is expected to do really, really well, this card might be initially very expensive and then drop down if she doesn't do well. But if it is low, how about this? If the card is cheaper than $40, I would recommend you to pick it up, because there's only one of two things that can happen. If Rebecca does end up doing well, you can trade it off for a more expensive card and or sell it. If Rebecca starts doing poorly, you only have very little to lose, right? It's like your margins of loss will probably be anywhere between 10 to $5. So if you can risk 10 to $5 to potentially gain 20, then there you go. I think that's as fair as I can put it for Kitos. Then we've got Veggie. Veggie is one of the yellow bangers, now one of the new staples for the yellow color. It is a 2K counter that has a ridiculous trigger, and the art is just absurd. Like, that art goes, again, super hard. Thank you, Bandai. $50. Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I actually have no idea where I would put this card. I'm a big fan of this card, so I probably would overvalue it. Over the community. I think the community might value it just a little bit lower because he doesn't necessarily belong in any of these standard yellow decks. I don't think Katakuri is a huge enjoyer of this card, and or Big Mama might be. Both of the Big Moms might be, but Katakuri isn't necessarily too excited to play this card, and that's probably the more meta relevant yellow deck at this point in time. The decks that really want to play him again are the odd yellow decks, which are, again, the Mamas, the blue yellow Crocodiles, the Queen. And those decks, when they want it, they really want it. And then, so it's tough. It just removes your targets for the Big Mom Pirates. And then if you continue to decrease that, then your Pero Sparrow is in range of whiffing. And then if you do that, it's going to feel really, really bad. I have whiffed on Pero Sparrow in the past, so let me tell you, the fact that this card increases that innately doesn't make it too good for that specific deck. So I think I'm over talking on Veggie. I would put him anywhere between like 30 to 35 bucks. I think is a really fair valuation on this card. I think the card is fantastic, but we're going to have to wait and see on this one. This is one that I'm not too sure on, and I'm not convinced on my own evaluation. Then we've got Sanji. Sanji's currently at $100. I mean, I'm going to blame the Netflix live action for pushing this card's price up because the guy who played Sanji did a fantastic job. I'm gonna take this time to talk about that. I saw his character. I didn't think he really looked like Sanji. They didn't give him the little eyebrow swirl, which may have been too cartoony for a live action. I get it, but the guy did such a phenomenal job as portraying Sanji that fine, you got me. I'm down. I'm gonna play Sanji at locals. Not only that, why was he so ripped? It was ridiculously ripped for Sanji. Off topic. It's a great card. Insane trigger. It has the blocker stat line. It's part of the Vin Smoke family, and Pudding can also search this. So because of this card is absurd in the yellow color. Absolutely absurd. And therefore, I do think this card will be one of the cards that is one of the bangers of the set and should be around Kaido Luffy range in terms of price. He is part of, again, they didn't give him the Straw Hat Crew tag, which is bizarre. Whatever, gonna let that one slide. But it's weird, just saying. They didn't give him the Straw Hat tag, but it's a very, very solid card nonetheless. I think this card, 50s to 60s, is gonna be where this card stays for a little bit. If it drops below that, that's great. If it doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised. Then we've got Miss All Sundays. Now we're moving towards the Baroque Works. This card is currently sitting at $70. It's a super cool card. Is it $70? Hell no. I do think that the Baroque Work characters and the Baroque Work decks are really cool. I'm a huge coper for them. I think they're super duper solid, but she really doesn't have a home in a deck that isn't blue yellow Crocodile. You can play her in blue purple. In purple yellow Crocodile. You can play her in blue purple Croc, and she's still mighty good. But the Dawn -2 trigger doesn't feel great. She's a no counterable card. It does have ramp, which you can now ramp in blue-purple more consistently, which is nice. But is it good enough? And that's the question you have to always ask yourself, and I don't think it's necessarily good enough. And the blue-yellow color, the purple-yellow color, it's really, really solid because when you get the trigger, you trigger your leader, and you don't necessarily net any Dawn minus. You actually Dawn net even, and you actually can turn cards that were tapped into active, which is really, really good. Again, because I don't think that leader is something that people are flocking to, or I think it's going to do too well in the meta. I think that maybe Miss All Sunday will suffer innately because of that, and therefore I can see this card again. 25 to 35 bucks is where I would put this card. Maybe 30 to 40 because it is Miss All Sunday. Then we've got Crocodile. This card is... Whoo-wee, I love this card. This card's sick. Big Crocodile alt arts. That's me. But seeing it at $50 got me excited. That means I can pick up 4 of these pretty easily, because if it's at $50 now, that means it's going to plummet later. And again, the decks that want to play this are very, very rare. It's literally purple, yellow Crocodile and blue, purple Crocodile. Really just it. Your leader has to include Baroque's Works in order to get the heal, and that's kind of what we want this card for. And those are the only purple Baroque Works leaders that we have, and I love them, but does the community love them? Are they viable? Are they competitive? Those are the questions we got to ask ourselves. And I don't think they necessarily are. And therefore, I can see this card below 20 bucks, which is sick. Yeah, no sales. Crazy. Then we've got Who's Who. I do think Who's Who is one of the better cards from this set. Again, maybe the card isn't necessarily good now, but it's good in the future. It is a searcher for all of the Animal Kingdom pirates. So those guys are pretty good. If your deck is playing Animal Kingdom pirates and has the blue color, you might want to play this. If your colors are purple, blue specifically, I'm looking at you, Kaido and Crocodile. This card is pretty good. It finds you like 30 specific cards that you just innately want to play into your deck. That's great. The card art looks fantastic, but it's not Nami. And it is Slash, which is important to know, right? So because of all these things, I don't think this card will hold its value. I can see this card anywhere between like 30 to 40 bucks because it's still a searcher for a very important archetype. And even though even if it's not good now, it'll be good later. And I do argue that it is good now. Then we got Pell, arguably the only playable red card from the set. And playable is a stretch of a word. Depending on what happens with the ban list, this card may or may not increase in price. And because of that, it's tough. I do think Pell is going to be one of the cards that just might be, you were too late to really see the sun. And because of that, I think Pell might be one of the cards that do go under the $20 mark. I think this card is really, really good, but this card screams ace. And maybe I'm the only one that's coping hard enough to play this in an ace deck. As you can see, there are no sales at this moment, so I can see this card just going whoop, 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 all the way down, as people are probably just not on the radar of how strong Pell is. And lastly, we've got Mr. 5, which I'm not even going to read the context of this card. This is the unfortunate loser of the set. It is what it is. They gave it to one of the Baroque Works, but someone has to be the loser. This card is going to be one of the cards that is the alt arts that are less than 10 bucks in my opinion. So that's going to be it. That's basically all of the information that we got for Kingdoms of Animal Kingdom. I'm in Disney World. That's going to be my evaluation of the Kingdoms of Intrigue set for the One Piece trading card game. Now, I know this was kind of a long video, and at some point I feel like I was rambling, but I hope that I was able to express what I wanted to in terms of the prices of these cards. Basically, if you want to get a TLDR of what I think of this set, don't buy things at pre-release prices. I think everything right now is being held because people are excited. New shiny cards, man, and that's cool. I'm excited to play with them too. I mean, if you got the funds for it, who am I to tell you how to spend your money, right? Who's anyone to tell you how to spend your money? But if you want to save a little and make your your bucks go a little bit longer, possibly instead of buying one card, you can make it, buy two versions of it. Just wait about a week or two, see how things settle. Play the deck in low rarity, and when you truly think, well, this is something I'm really enjoying, then go ahead and make the alt art jumps if you want, right? And because at the end of the day, if you're playing a competitive card game, you don't need the shiny cards to play the game, and that's something that's some advice that has to bounce back, and I'm gonna have to understand at some point in time. But that's going to be it for this market watch, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a while since I do one of these, so make sure to hit that like button for the comeback of the market watch. Leave a comment in the comment section where you guys want to talk about anything. If I'm a little bit off base in my evaluations, or if you think I'm coping a little too hard in some of them, make sure to leave a comment. And as always, if you aren't enjoying the One Piece trading card game content on this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because I took a long break, but we back, baby. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.